Good afternoon to you, Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your second hurricane outlook and discussion for today, Monday, September 16th, 2019. Now this is going to be a little bit lengthier than the other one, so, be ready. I'm just warning you now. This one's going to go in depth on some things that we need to talk about, both in the present, things that we're looking for over the next several days, and that's the present, generally speaking, in weather terms. And over the next few weeks, as we look ahead to the second half of September and going into October, some very important signals showing up, and we need to cover all of that. So get your reading material out, kick back, relax, and enjoy a nice long hurricane outlook and discussion. All right, so first we will look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. Now, we haven't looked at this in a while, so I figured I'd update this today. And we see here in the eastern Pacific, let's use purple. In fact, most of the Pacific here, the eastern half. Along the equatorial region, we see this cold anomaly that has set up. So certainly no El Nino, and you could argue that we're headed towards La Nina conditions, colder than average overall, and that goes right over to the coast of South America. Hopefully the anchovy population down here nice and rich, because the colder water aids in more nutrient dense waters and fishing grounds, etc. So maybe that's good, right? But a non-existent El Nino, and when you get La Nina, that prevents, generally speaking, a lot of upward motion from happening over here, trying to draw, on a 2D flat map, a 3D up kind of regime, where the air goes up here, cuts across, and sinks over here. We don't have that in this kind of a pattern, generally speaking. You can still have sinking motion in the atmosphere related to the overall circulation in the atmosphere. We call that the Walker circulation. But that gets into meteorology. That's a longer, we don't have time to go into that detail. But the bottom line, when we see this kind of a pattern of colder in the Pacific and a warm Atlantic main development region, you can look down here at the scale, some of these anomalies here, a quarter to a half, maybe a full degree in some areas, above the long-term average, all across the main development region, right here in the peak time of the Atlantic hurricane season. Now you notice up here along the southeast coast, I'll zoom in, we do have these patches of colder anomalies that have shown up because of Hurricane Dorian churning up the waters there, and now Humberto is going to do the same thing. And in fact, you'll see this blue start to carve out probably in this direction over the next several days. We will revisit this maybe next week. But just because you have colder anomalies doesn't necessarily mean that you've knocked water temperatures down enough to keep anything from developing, and Humberto is a great case in point. Right now, the center of circulation is at around 30 north and 76 west, or about right in here is where the core of Dorian, Humberto, come on, Mark, Humberto is today, okay? And those are some yellow pixels, meaning water temperatures are right about where they should be, but it doesn't take strong anomalies, like these out here, or maybe these reds up here, to get a solid hurricane. And when I show you what we have with Humberto, you'll see it is definitely on the strengthening trend. So another way to look at the water temperature profile is through the upper ocean heat content, and that is very strong across all of the western Atlantic basin over here. In the Caribbean and the Gulf especially, very, very warm. And even up here off the coast of Florida in the southeast, upper ocean heat content values are still formidable and strong enough to generate powerful hurricanes. And as we take a look here in a moment at what Humberto is doing, you'll see that very clearly. So the higher up on the scale you go, the more upper ocean heat content is available. High octane, deep, warm water, not just at the surface, and all around the islands here, plenty of it. The most of it over here, ample supply. And it's been a long time that since we've had a strong hurricane in the western and northwest Caribbean Sea. Will this year be the year that we change that? We had the genesis of Michael last year down in this region, but it ended up peaking up here along, believe it or not, the shelf water just offshore of Mexico Beach, as you recall. But we haven't had anything develop in this area in quite a while. We'll have to see. The pattern is going to favor something there over the next few weeks. So these are the anomalies. These are the upper ocean heat content chart here, or this is. Now, graphing this out, it's also interesting. Another way to visualize this is through this nice graph here, this plot from Levi Cowan's site, and the Nino 3.4 index, which essentially encompasses roughly this region through here, right about there. The average temperature in that area, according to the data from today, is down there at negative there, right? Negative 0.55. Now, the Climate Prediction Center typically looks at minus 0.5, a half a degree Celsius, and lower as La Nina. Now, it's not like you hit negative 0.50 and bam, we're in La Nina. It's a time thing. It has to be like 3 months, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. But you know what? This is the way I see it. Everything fell off a cliff here at the beginning of August and has stayed in the negative realm for quite some time, while on the other side of the ocean there, or the planet, several thousand miles away, look what's happened with this index. Now, if only our stocks could do this. Wouldn't that be nice? Oil prices are doing that, but that's geopolitical, and we're not going to get into that. Ugh. But, yes, the Atlantic Main Development Region sitting at roughly 0.4 Celsius above the long-term average. And again, I've said this before, it's not like you can, I've got some water here, keep my throat lubricated. It's not like I could take this water and warm it up from whatever it is now. It's out of the refrigerator, so it's, probably 42 degrees or something Fahrenheit. I'm not going to be able to warm that water up a half a degree Celsius or 0.4 Celsius and take a sip and go, oh, nice. You're not going to notice. Your bath, if you're in a bath, then you can magically turn the water temperature up 0.436 Celsius, you really wouldn't notice. But on the vast scale of thousands of miles of ocean, hundreds of feet deep, in many cases, that warm water, that is a tremendous amount of additional energy stored from the sun. Well, not in my office, there isn't, but outside, in those oceans. Do you understand that? So, extremely important. And as you get into thermodynamics and oceanography, meteorology, geography, all that earth science wrapped up, those temperatures matter. And so when we look at the long term in climate change, whoever's causing it, whether it's natural or it's all man-made, I don't care. I mean, I care, but I'm not going to be able to stop it myself one way or the other. But it matters because overall, the ocean temperatures seem to be going up, even if ever so slightly. Bottom line, you can't sense it. You can't tell that your cup of water is 0.3 or 0.5 or whatever Celsius warmer than it was, unless you sit around for a few hours and it warms to room temperature. But seriously, it's a lot of energy. Take my word for it, okay? So as I see this, this is alarming because it means there's a lot of energy out there. And if something comes along to tap into it across this pattern of warmer than normal sea surface temperatures where all of us live, nobody lives out here. There's ships on the surface of the ocean transversing, but that's it. The rest of us, we live over here, and this is where it matters. Same thing for the Pacific if something comes up in the eastern Pacific. All right? So that's a look at how that works out. Very interesting as you compare those two indices. All right. So what do we got? As they say, we have a lot going on. You can tell that things are changing in the Atlantic Basin, the Western Hemisphere, on the broader scale. A favorable Kelvin wave moving through. That's that fertilizer truck that I talk about. And it's this area through here, expanding into the Atlantic, that will all extend And then we're going to broaden this very large, expansive Madden-Julian oscillation, and it's just an easy way, not easy because it's very difficult to explain to people. It is, the easiest way to think of it is favorability, positive for development. Whereas the last few weeks, August through recently, with the exception of where Dorian was, this area has all been generally negative for development. Sinking air, dry air, so forth and so on, and that looks like it's going to change. So we have invest area 97L, we have Humberto, we have a couple of invest areas in the Pacific, right? And then we have Hurricane Kiko to keep watch of over the next several days. Looking at the satellite animation here, courtesy of Levi's site at Tropical Tidbits. Humberto over here, strengthening, and I'll show you a close-up of this in a minute, and I'm going to make a valid point about, whoa, look at the colder sea surface temperatures. I don't mean to make fun of people, but gosh, you see people talking about all that upwelling that Dorian did. So what? Look, you got a formidable hurricane out there, and if this thing was headed into Charleston, it's not, but if it was, you'd notice it, trust me. Anyhow, we do have this system to watch, and this is going to be a big deal, I think, and I'm going to explain why, and it's really understanding the hazards. We get so fixated on labels and whatnot, we got to pay attention to this. Here's the energy trying to gather in the Eastern Pacific. This is X96L, I do believe. That's bringing in inclement weather across the area of the islands, spreading into eventually Puerto Rico. Maybe this tries to develop later, we shall see. This is trying to come together, and remember what I told you. The longer this takes, the more west it goes before it starts gaining latitude. Do not be surprised if it poses a threat to the Northeast Caribbean Sea. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. Don't turn my words around on me. But the longer it takes to develop, if you've done this long enough to know, you know how that works. The more west they get, they gain more longitude. That's east and west of Greenwich, the prime meridian, before they start gaining latitude. Those are the lines that are north and south of the equator. So keep your eyes on this sucker right here, Invest 97L. More energy coming off, more behind it. It's loaded for bear, as they say. Looking at the close-up. Okay, here's Humberto. Now, let's take a trip back into time. We just had Dorian, and Dorian really churned up the water down here near Great Abaco and Grand Bahama, no doubt. But then it moved north and eventually northeast and went across the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It churned up the waters all through here. It didn't do anything out here, and you can see clearly what's happening with Humberto. Very well developed eye, on its way to becoming a Category 3. My prediction was 120, 125, something like that. Maybe it gets even stronger, but I'm almost certain this becomes a Category 3 hurricane. Look at that band way out here. I would suspect if you were out there and could safely do so, you'd probably see some water spouts underneath some of that banding and those thunderstorms that are going up. An incredible feeder band coming around out of the warmer waters down here, feeding moisture into that system. It is a crying shame, it really is, that hurricanes, tropical cyclones as a whole, on a global scale, do so much damage and take the loss of life that they do. Because if you don't marvel at that, I mean, it is a work of nature. It is an engineering success in thermodynamics and the atmosphere, and it's a shame that they cause so much mayhem. If they didn't, and we were all well built to take these systems, we could be a little bit more excited about it. But we have to be careful because we know that they do harm people, and people are still suffering, of course, down here, where Dorian was. But there's Humberto. Will it impact Bermuda? Yes, it will. But I believe that the core, this area right through here, will remain far enough away from Bermuda to spare them the worst. But these outer rain bands and the southerly flow, as that moves across closer to Bermuda, I believe you will see some impacts with gusty winds, rain bands from time to time. Some of that rain could be heavy. However, as I mention often, that can be a good thing because you get that fresh water and it fills up your cisterns, your tanks as you call it, and you need that fresh water. So sometimes these can be beneficial. Now, you folks up here along the southeast coast, let me pull up the Hurricane Center track on this sucker. This is really important, and I mentioned this before. I'm going to mention it again. Rip currents, swells, etc., those will kill you. Those can break your neck. Those can take your children away from you. I don't often talk in those terms. It's usually when you get a Cat 5 or something coming, a 20-something foot storm surge, or a Michael or whatever, Katrina. But labels. You say, out to sea. Out to sea equals, I don't have to worry about it for 9 out of 10 people, I bet. Are you one of those people? Maybe you are. And that's understandable because so much emphasis is put on hurricanes coming, or it's not coming. And when it's not coming, you blow it off. I get it. But all this area that I outlined in yellow, high risk of rip currents, swells. Again, the surfers that are good at handling this thing, enjoy it. Just be careful. Everybody else that's going to the beach and having a good time, and this is going to last several days, probably into the weekend, maybe. But it's still warm. People still going to the coast, and eventually all this is going to move up along the mid-Atlantic states and into the Northeast. And I really need you. Without you, there's no reason for me. If you're not watching these videos, I might as well quit. Honestly, for real. I got to keep you safe. So please stay safe out there and heed any warnings that you may come across. Ask the lifeguard. You know, if you're from somewhere inland, you're in Ohio and you're going down to the Outer Banks, great. But check the beach conditions. Go to weather.gov, put in the zip code of the Outer Banks, or Charleston, you know, Edisto, whatever. Eventually up Delaware, New Jersey, Belmar, you know, Long Island, as these swells, as this intensifies, oh look, they do make it a major hurricane. I didn't even notice that. As these swells go up, this is going to affect tens of millions of people, and it will kill people if you're not careful. Let's make that 0, please. No need for a cyclone moving away from the United States to kill people. Let's take it easy, all right? This. Not labeled an invest that I know of, but wow. I mean, you can see it's trying to ramp up here. Vorticity signature, it's, you know, trying to do something. In fact, is my CMISS still up somewhere? No, I think I took it away. So let's use this tab. Fine, there we go. Let's check the vorticity, and I'll show you where this is stacking up. There you go. Trying to come together there in the Northwest Gulf. That represents energy, vorticity, spin in the atmosphere, whatever you want to call it. And the visible satellite does not lie. You can see the moisture feeding into the system. It's trying to curl up. Lots of moisture. And again, I'm going to get on my soapbox just for a minute. I gave you fair warning earlier. This is going to be lengthy. But that's the advantage of doing these videos on something like YouTube and sharing them on Patreon and elsewhere. We can educate people. All right? And if you've got time to listen to me go on and on and on, and if you don't like it, tune me out. I'm not going to cry. Believe me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. But if you want to learn something, stick around. And this is one of those times. We think of depression, storm, hurricane. Depression, you go, oh, tropical depression out there. Everybody starts talking about it around the water cooler. Tropical storm, it gets a name. The next name, I think, would be Ingrid. Ooh, tropical storm Ingrid's out there. More people talk about it. Hurricane, everybody talks about it. But nobody talks about, as they should, a tropical disturbance. And, you know, now I say nobody. It's not as well thought of. You have certain people in media, they're going to talk about it. People like Jeff Lindner at the Harris County Flood Control District in Houston, he's going to talk about it. KPRC in Houston and elsewhere, you know, they're going to talk about it. KHOU, of course. But how about you, John Q. Public, Mary Jane Public, whoever? Look at that. That's a lot of energy. That's bigger than you. That's moisture. It's coming for your area. Houston down to the coastal bend, maybe. Bottom line, you know, oil interests notwithstanding, they're on top of this. The energy interests have meteorologists that get paid 6 figures to keep those billions of dollars of operations going. I want to keep you guys alive. And so, Greater Houston, Port Arthur, Beaumont, you know, up in maybe the hill country, you need to be watching this because it could be a big rainmaker. So much so that I am seriously considering hopping on a plane tomorrow and taking some of our equipment to Houston to cover this. Partly because I want to test some stuff that some of our crowdfunding people have provided, put it into action, not only equipment but funding, and with my partnership with the Weather Channel, be able to provide the Weather Channel and their viewers with live video. We can immerse you in this. I know that area very well. I know the hot spots, and it can be very helpful. Not everything has to be this big-time hurricane, beast. I only go after the big stuff. No, sir. Whatever. It's impact. And this can have a substantial impact on a big population area, not just Houston, but the rest of the upper Texas coast and areas inland over the next few days. So I'm 90% sure that I'm flying from Wilmington to Houston tomorrow, and we'll be setting out equipment to monitor this, and more on that later, okay? That's how seriously I am taking this. Not that I think it's going to become a hurricane. You don't need a hurricane to create massive problems. Harvey was not a hurricane when it dumped all that rain over here. It was a tropical storm, a hurricane that made landfall near Rockport. Remember? Please remember. All right. Further bolstering the evidence of the system in the Gulf, here's the GFS from earlier today, the 12Z run. Of course, Humberto right here. There's Bermuda. Let's put this into motion using the slider. You see what happens there. Watch Humberto. The core goes north and west of Bermuda. That's great. It kind of tries to turn back around. Yeah, whatever. We'll watch that. I'm not too concerned about it coming back around, and if it does, we're going to have plenty of time to be ready for such a scenario. It is interesting. It's caught between steering patterns. I wouldn't put too much worry into it. You folks in Bermuda, as Humberto goes by, yes, those feeder bands will go across. You will have some impacts, but the worst of it should stay away. And then you see down in the corner, I see it too, there's 97L trying to come in. We have plenty of time to watch that. I believe this will be ever changing and maybe come in closer to like that. That's my belief, my opinion. I could be wrong. That's not that far off. I'm not trying to scare people. It's not like 40 million people live down there and I need the clicks. I mean, come on. It's just experience. The longer this takes to get its act together, the more chance it has to do that. Maybe not that far south and west, but maybe so. Just keep your eyes on it, please. We have interest down here. Some of our patrons, our supporters, we have cameras down there. We're going to be watching that closely. Now, for you folks over in Texas and elsewhere, let's check these regions here. Go back up. Southeast U.S., South Central. Let's do that. Perfect. So this is the GFS. Let's back out just a little bit. And let's go to the initial. This is 42 hours. There we go. So that's the initial map. And here we are. If we move it out into time, you see all that energy out there. It's trying, according to the model. And the Euro does a very similar thing. It starts to bundle. And look, 24 to 30 hours out. And then it comes in. All that. I mean, look at the shape. I mean, come on. You got to pay attention to that. That looks like a tropical storm symbol in the modeling. And that represents rain bands, probably. I mean, there's meteorology tucked in here that somebody like Levi or Jeff Linder could explain, the mathematics and the physics, but I know what to look for. That to me, that spells rain, energy. The wind barbs are not too strong. Of course not. I'm not worried about too much coastal impact. Some rise in water levels, of course. But this is a big rainmaker in the making for a big population area. And if you move the slider out, you see what happens. It goes on up across the Texas Hill Country. You know, if you live there, you know how this works. And eventually it makes its way on up through Oklahoma and into Arkansas, perhaps. Lots of rain coming, all right? Take that seriously. Euro time now. We leave all the modeling for the next few days. And look at this. I can't believe it. that is one heck of an amplification of the Madden-Julian oscillation into phases 8 and 1, and that favors a very active time when today through the 30th of September and likely beyond. It's going to linger, and as we get into October, things could be very busy, and the Western Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico could be at risk. We have a long way to go. All right, I mentioned Patreon. I'm on here. We are doing a lot with this. It is our own micro-universe of social media, blogging, information, interaction, you name it, and it's a way for you to be able to support what I'm doing, and it's making a huge difference. I'm able to post stuff like these videos. You folks can respond and comment like you see on YouTube or Facebook, but there are no trolls here. Only paying members, patrons. Patrons are somebody who support something important to them. Think about patrons of the art or whatever. Movie producers get money and they make a movie happen. Now, we're not raising millions of dollars here. That'd be great. But everybody matters, from the $1 patrons all the way up to those that are able to pledge $100 or more. And yes, people do that because they believe in what we're doing here. Some of these people provide equipment. I come on and I say, hey, we could really use this, we could really use that. And folks have sent that equipment and we put it into use. It benefits the patrons first, of course, because they are the benefactors immediately by having access. But in the bigger scheme of things, it affects everybody because we're able to take this data, share it with the National Hurricane Center, share it with the Weather Service, share it on the broader scale, universities when I do talks long down the road, and it's supported by crowdfunding, and that's what this is all about. So to become a patron, you just click on Become a Patron. And we've got these levels over here from $1, and the more $1 folks I get, the better. I would rather have thousands of $1 than just a few several $100 for obvious reasons. I want to be able to affect more people with what I'm doing, and this is a great way to fund it. But we do have these tiers, right? And for the $10 tier, you get to become a member of our HurricaneTrack Insider, and that's what that looks like here. This is the home page, and it's our community that's been around for 15 years now, 14, 15 years. We had it started as a subscriber service. Now it's the landing spot, as I call it, member-supported innovation in hurricane tracking. Our patrons at the $10 level and higher have access to that. So you become a patron. If you can do the $10, then you can drop it to $1 or $5 in the off season. But stick around because we're going to be doing a lot. It's not just hurricanes. We have live video feeds. Some of them are permanent. We have this digital dashboard when things are kicking. And we have the radar we can put in. My Twitter is embedded. I'm telling you, we have the live chat just for our patrons. And you see people talking. These are supporters. These are them. You see some of your names in there. You know who you are. This is what we're doing with it. And I'm telling you, I often referred to what we're doing as immersive weather coverage. That's one side of it. But I'm also developing this original content that I call the Netflix of the weather world. You know, you subscribe to Netflix or Hulu or whatever, YouTube Red, and you get content. We're doing the same thing here. I will be producing a new television type series for next year that's going to start in January. Any of our patrons, the $1 level on up, doesn't matter, you're going to have access to that first and foremost. I will put it on Amazon Prime, but that's going to be 2 weeks after we drop it on Patreon. I call it Included with Patreon. So there's a lot of reasons to support this because it's enabling me. It's like Jerry Maguire. Remember that movie when he says, Rod Tidwell, help me help you. Or was it Jerry that said that to Rod? I think it was Jerry. I'm getting old. I can't remember all these details. Look it up. You'll see. It was a classic moment, but it's true. You are allowing me, by helping me, to turn around and help you with information, data, live video coverage like you've never seen before, and unlike anything available anywhere else out there. No other site, organization, group of people is doing anything like what we're doing here with the HurricaneTrack brand and Patreon. So hats off to the creators of Patreon for coming up with a way to allow people who are benefiting from YouTube creators, animation, podcast, movies, whatever, to hurricane information. And Levi is on there. The Weather Nerds are on there. The Weather Nerds. WeatherNerds.org and others. And they are getting support, and it's helping them to do some incredible things. So that's how I wanted to wrap up today's video. Trying to exit myself here. There we go. I appreciate you tuning in and listening. There's a lot of important stuff happening. I may be going to Houston tomorrow. We'll see. It looked like I might be going to Bermuda. Nope. Might be going to Houston. And if I do, that's the other good thing about Patreon, is I can do these updates just for patrons along the way. And again, it's like our little micro-universe of social media. It's incredible. And if you're already a patron, you already know what I'm talking about. Tell your friends about it, because it's really amazing. And I can keep you up to date along the way. If I go, I would be leaving in mid-morning, early afternoon, something like that. So in the morning, I'll do another video discussion, and I post that to Patreon and our HurricaneTrack Insider site first, and then about 15 minutes later, I make it available on our YouTube channel to all the public. All right, so if you're subscribed on YouTube, make sure you have notifications enabled, and you'll know when I post a video. Speaking of videos, thanks for tuning in and listening. I told you it would be lengthy, but I think we covered a lot of good info. Thanks for tuning in from your side of whatever screen you're doing so from. I greatly appreciate it more than you will ever know. I am Mark Sept, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.